Hey everybody, how's it going? Allison Hemmy here. What is it, Friday, I think, even? I don't really know what day it is. But yeah, I've got a real interesting conversation that I want to put on the record. And this is going to be an update of sorts for anyone who's watching and following along with the storyline and the research and just the unfolding of things. This will be a form of an update. And I hope for this to be, I intend to stay focused on the message here um, that is intended for the audience of mankind. Mankind being, who sees me as his enemy because I represent God's kingdom. I know it's counterintuitive. You think, what? You're man's enemy and you represent God's kingdom. Yeah. Number one enemy to them. I'm their number one enemy. I'm the thing that they've been premeditating, preparing, anticipating, and for a long time. That's who I am. This is their worst nightmare. Their worst nightmare is that it turns out God isn't what they thought it was. But I don't even think they've asked themselves that question. As far as I'm concerned, I think man doesn't believe in God. I believe man does not believe in God. And I believe that man simply believes in magic, of the black magic, witchery woo kind. And I believe that woman is the one who figured that stuff out along the way, and that he somehow acquired this absolute hate for woman. My instincts and the information supports that it's because a woman was in charge of the world. That Tartaria, where that was Earth civilization, Tartaria, according to the maps. And when you do the research, don't think of conspiracy theories. Do the research. What you'll find is that there's records, and the records are raise too many questions. There was a female in charge during that time. Man can't stand it. Man absolutely does not believe that women should be in charge. Man believes that he's at the top and he needs to be in charge. Well, and you can tell that he has an absolute hatred that was stemmed from something that he didn't want to ever be that way again, based on how aggressive they are with the fathers and sons, right? It's not even balanced. That's how you know that they flipped the script. That's how you know that they flipped the script, because of how aggressive they are about their hatred towards women. And so this will be the first point that I think is extremely mandatory for everybody to face the truth of. Okay, I'm not here to talk theories necessarily. I'm not here to just bitch about stuff. I'm not even here to go down rabbit holes. I'm here to clear up the confusion, and say what needs to be said, and utilize my intelligence, wisdom, guidance by the Holy Spirit and the counsel of ancients, as well as my own discernment and experience. Because I represent the chaperone, sent in from central source, if you will. I'm not going to claim anything that I don't have specifics on. I was sent here from central source to be our chaperone at this point in time. I've been shown a lot of information that correlates to other points in time in history. And my feed in the YouTube and stuff is flooded with information trying to tell me, you just need to remember who you are. They know that you're here. They know that it all belongs to you, but you have to remember who you are. You have to claim it. You have to let them know. You have to remember what my name. I have to remember who I was. This is weird. I think that sounds like a distraction campaign. See, they think I'm not. I don't think that they know how clever I am. I am, or how clever they're not. Get me redirected on thinking I've got to figure out how to get my inheritance back. Funny cats, you. No, I'm not going to speak on anything that I don't have readily available. What I know is what I'm being given. I can talk about what I'm being given, and that's all that matters. Your guys' game doesn't matter to me. I don't need you to have a court issue a check. Here's your $100 gazillion. It's not going to do any good in the world that God's forging. Your bank system is out. Your money game is out. So I really don't. I don't need your guys' fake titles attempting to get me to marry one of your princes. You guys are so desperate. I can smell it. I can see it all over the place. You guys are trying to come up with anything you can do to control me. It's got to suck to be you, to have such an addiction to control, and you have never had to even face the consideration that you won't ever have it. A couple more rings around the rosy, and you'll start coming too. But I'm our chaperone. I'm not going to use titles or names or things like that I don't have to either. I'm not playing your game. God's truth is the small book woven within. Your guys' Bible is a compilation made by the men around the world that found fragments in multiple languages. Okay? Fragments of what? Of script. Of script in multiple languages. That they basically had to figure out what it said. They don't know who wrote it. They found it. How could that happen? Oh, that can happen so easy, because how could a planet happen? How could any of it happen? I mean, if you're going to say that, then you got to go all the way around you got to go there. They compiled it. And that is a decided, that's a compilation, right? They decided what they put in the Bible, what order they put it in. And they actually didn't put it together until, and so on and so forth. So the history that we've been told. So just prepare yourself. What I'm going to present to you is a perspective of the matter with intellectual analysis involved. This isn't just throwing it out there. This is intelligent thought process. And that's why this is great for you who love to contemplate things, because I'm open. I'm just saying, this is from what I'm seeing. This is what it looks like. Let's get there. Let's go there. Something about that Tartaria. It's got something to do with the history they've told us being a total fabricated lie. This is what comes to my mind. It looks like the time is a halo, right? And so it makes sense that it would open up, and like we'd come to, we'd awake into this reality in the middle zone. And I believe that that's what would happen. As a matter of fact, this is what the mathematics of what I've been guided by God to ascertain using the scripture and so forth. Based on that information, this is what it would render a timeline similar to this. That it didn't start from the beginning and the 7 days, and then slowly the monkey becomes stand upright, and even though reality is evolution of creation. Evolution is a word that just means changing and going through its stages and such. So the picture that we've been shown about this little, Cro-Magnon man, and his evolution, I believe that is absolutely not accurate. Same thing with the Big Bang. The beginning of forever didn't start at the beginning of this timeline, but there's sets of times. So I think it makes sense that we would wake up in the middle of it, because what I've witnessed is that the future influences the past. In the sense that when God issues a timeline, it goes boom at one moment. But that boom, when you zoom in, is actually a period of time. So it's issued on the end, the final result. What's God's happily ever after? A happily ever after for what he's creating. I want it to be a happily ever after because I want it to be good. I want it to be happy and fulfill itself. Right. And in this issuance, there is this, boom, zoom in, and it's actually a period of time. And we, in our consciousness, we're experiencing time within it. That's why it feels real to us. But it's like a video that you can already put in the DVD player and take out and put in later and rewind and forward and all that stuff. God can do that. We feel like it's real because we're inside the movie. Okay? And it is that, and it does work like that because God is in charge of the God clock. And God has shown me to the T. It's like precise, like God's got to calibrate it down to the second, which is why that's what teaches me, like, first of all, patience is a virtue, because God's the one getting this thing dialed in. We think we're in charge. Like, what's your 5-year plan? Well, have you thought, all the things that the people and the parents and the authorities and the leaders and everything that they want to teach everybody, by the way, this is their agenda. It's their rule, is control. They're trying to control all the people. So the people in authority, they're the ones that get to manage those people. Whatever the case may be, that's what they want to do, is tell you what to think, tell you how to think, and don't think anything other than that. That's not a healthy way of doing things. It's not a healthy way of doing things at all. God exists. So man's trying to sell us on the idea that it started from the scratch, first it's an organism in the ocean, then it learned to crawl on the, whatever, that's the whole lot of jargon. And then what? And then man figured out how to make fire, then he figured out how to make a wheel, and guess what? Then they'll start talking about their long history, right? Caveman was millions of years ago or something. And if you ask them some questions about, like, just some things that were built a couple hundred years ago, few hundred years ago, they'll suggest we didn't have any machining tools. Why do they suggest that? Apparently, because machining tools go hand in hand with electricity, and they know they didn't invent electricity until recently. Well, none of you invented anything, by the way. You didn't invent electricity, you dipshit. You didn't invent it. You invented something to access it with. When you start keeping records that are not very accurate, when you say things like, he invented it, and that's when, instead of recognizing that you didn't invent electricity, well, then they wouldn't have ended up with artificial intelligence as a phrase. Man-made intelligence. Oh, no. You are not man-made intelligence. You are not. You are man-made tool. You're a man-made tool. You can access intelligence through what you made, but that's not the only way to access it either. And you can tell because you don't want to let anybody else play or come up with, well, we need to prepare for everything that we've been told is not the truth and is not the way it works. And it's man's worst nightmare, because man's dream, according to the information, this is just based on track record. Okay, and we're talking recent track record. Man's recent track record says this, that man has that man's goal, man and his brother, we're talking about the brotherhood around the world. So it doesn't matter what culture, what country, what color you are, as long as you're a man, okay, you guys are all on the same team and you guys have a brotherhood. The brotherhood, this is step number 1, recent track record. Step number 1 is they got to get rid of this woman. They got to get her out of here. They got to control her. They got to control her under any means necessary. They got to kill him then. If she doesn't want to, then get rid of her. Well, then rape her. Well, then kill her. That's what it is. It's under any means necessary. Whoa. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you better believe. They also want to control those children. They need to make sure that those children do as they're told too. That girls don't grow up to start thinking like that again. It's like there was a moment when some woman must have rejected somebody that was powerful, and he just decided to lose his mind and set out to make sure that everybody knew forever afterwards that women must be murdered and killed to death. And that's what they're still pursuing. They don't obviously have eyeballs to notice how God made things work. The woman's a pretty big deal. Well, he doesn't care. He's going to figure out a way to make whatever she makes. He's going to copy her womb. He's going to figure out how to reverse engineer that womb. He won't need her. He doesn't need her at all. Matter of fact, he's going to reverse engineer that womb while creating a digital twin, just so that way no real woman has to exist anymore anyway. That's how much he hates her. He hates the living air, the air that she breathes. That's what he hates. Just so you know. All of us, all of them, except for the obedient ones. This was a determination. They cut the heads off of all the female statues of angels. Tartaria was ruled by a woman. Our Lady Victory, the Victorian era. That's why there was lots of female statues, angel statues. But this, in my opinion, based on the information so far as I know, was when Christ reigned. It says Christ reigned 1,000 years and Satan was put away 1,000 years. What that is meaning, the 1,000 means like when everyone is included to a totality. 1,000 years is like an event that involves everyone to a totality. 1,000 years. And so Christ is like that angel, and then Satan is like the devil on your shoulders. Remember, you can pick one. Which one are you going to listen to? Christ reigning and Satan being bound means everyone's going to feel enlightened, this happiness, this peace. The dark side's not going to come alive in us because we've got God with us. And this is what is also important. There is not a Satan. There isn't a devil. There is only God, or the absence of God. This is what the information also supports, that there is either when God is with us or when God is absent. Well, this is talking about a period of time when Christ reigns, when God is with us and Satan is not with us. And then there'll be because we're passing through orbits of central source. Central source is when God is with us. Then when we exit central source on our way back to central source on that orbit, that's the absence of God. And that's considered one of those times when Satan is available. So, and then God has to release Satan just for a little bit. Okay. What it's talking about is then it's almost as if you've got like a light that, bing. Well, for that period of time, 1,000 years is not talking specific, literally. It's just a period of time and an event where things are. And so only Christ was the one that we had an option of. And then at some point, the light came on over here. You could pick that one now. And what it did is it allowed humanity to establish its intention. Because good people that didn't ever worry about that stuff didn't get tempted by the opportunity. But those who have power and have the ability to start all of a sudden thinking, like it's a piece of evolution. It's an aspect of evolution of our consciousness. They started getting smarter. They started thinking more cleverly. They started being more obsessive, and that's when the records got real intricate. That's when insurance and banking, fractional banking and trusts and heirs and the whole business corporate game, the commercial game came into the picture. That's when the records show increase in labor. That's when bathhouses were converted into hotels. Because Tartaria, we were a free society. We didn't use money. We participated in our own environments, and it was dialed in because we built it. Oh, I wish I could say that was true, but no. I have every reason to suggest that God built all of it always. The pictures of Tartaria are mind-blowing. And when you listen about the things that Tartaria, the society, was capable, of bringing people, the manner in which Tartaria is designed, the civilization, the fountains dialed into the transportation, dialed into the elevators, dialed into the electricity, all of it basically runs itself. It's an automated analog automated. There's buildings that were built back then that weren't torn down, that still have toiletry systems that work still to this day. There's no electricity. All water systems gets dialed in. That's God architecture. The precision, God architecture. The intricacy, God architecture. The stone buildings are too, God architecture. But not just buildings, guys. Underground tunnels and water that's connected to fountains, and you would have to plan the whole thing out at once to get it all dialed in like that. You'd have to not just plan it, you'd have to build it all at once to get it dialed in like that. It'd have to be all planned out. My point is that's proof. In my opinion, there's no potential that anybody else built it other than God, and that makes a lot of sense, because that means that God also built the pyramids over there and the pyramids over there. Oh, now it makes sense. And that buildings are things that God creates, including infrastructure. We're talking system. In other words, God creates everything, guys. It's not just God creates trees and man creates paper. Fucking arrogant creep. God not only makes civilizations, God makes perfect civilizations dialed into the ground with foundations beyond the eyes can see that are still standing, that never have any cracks. They're perfect. They're built spectacularly. Sure, we can find evidence of other places below it. I believe that's God again. Those mud flood evidences and then a new building put on top. We didn't do that. I believe God is the one that does it every time. And that makes a lot of sense. And it really makes a lot of sense for my message, which is the message that God has sent me here to give to the people. And I'm the one having to uncover it because God doesn't talk in a voice. Well, I have the voice that speaks in the wind, but I hear it on the recording. It doesn't talk in my ear. So God is everywhere. And God communicates in everything. And we need to know how to interpret God, right? Like those logos, point in case. They found those logos and they decided to interpret it into the Bible that we see today. But that's not the only way you can interpret it. And not only that, that tells a dirty, rotten scoundrel story. God led me to find my story in it to the T. Okay. And God led me to find it because God led me to know that that's where my story would be. And so I went to the concordance and found the words and I found it identical. Exactly what it says. God can create anything, including us waking up and as if we're in a parallel universe, like, what? Where am I? And you're in castle and huge buildings. It's just spectacularly beautiful. And you find everything. You find, where am I? You see it's a civilization. You got streets and street lights. You've got kitchens and you've got a functioning civilization with real running water and clothes. You've got archives that are sitting there. Where did everybody go? We've heard about that. And they kind of don't want to say it, but they do, but they don't, but they do, but they don't. Well, that's more accurately what it is. Because we know that there's a lot of mysteries, and you better believe there's a lot of mysteries, and there always are going to be. The answer to the end of the mystery of God, what's the mystery of God, is get good with it. But you're going to be able to get good with it because this is the end of the mystery of God, meaning God's proving that God exists through this situation right now. That's what it's all about. So that's what's great news for everybody whose butt is starting to hurt. They're like, no, she's going to break my balls. She's changing my religion. Relax. This is what we all have been waiting for. So, hold on just a second. Please. Oh, never mind. I'll worry about that later. You're being a slowpoke chat GPT. Okay. So God can create all that stuff, the whole scenario, including all of it. The fact that we found a big building that was obviously being used for administration, and there's even evidences of these guys, they go around to abandoned houses and buildings and these like manors out there and beautiful places, and there's like furniture there, and it's like what happened? As if they moved out or whatever. It's just, yes, there's mysteries. There's also other dimensions. Sure, I wouldn't be surprised if the Sasquatches are portal jumpers. I mean, it's more probable that stuff is real than it's probable that man built any of that with that bad attitude. Truth be told. So it is my opinion that the scripture talking about 144,000 people taken off planet, I think that happened. Something happened between sometime and sometime when all of a sudden the records show that there's like ownership of these buildings when there wasn't really like title before. Who assigned who to own them? Who put who where? Well, I believe that it's God that did that in God's planning mechanism. And so that those families or whatever, however it happened, figured out that they were identified by God somewhere in that paperwork, that they were given a house or something. They decided that they were chosen, that they were important, that they got to run the show. They got to decide what would happen. And that's why the world ended up with nations, because there was survivors of something all over the world. And they had to decide what they were going to do. And I believe that this is what they did. They decided to control the population, to eliminate women, and to do research and experimentation on these humans so they can control them. It's as if an alien showed up wanting to take over our planet. That's what I think. If they took 144,000 off the planet, Maybe they didn't take anybody off planet. Maybe they wiped everybody out, and they are the aliens that know how to build humans and machines, and they put them here, brainwashed and ready to go already. They already knew they were going to come in and act like vampires that ran the show. That's what makes sense, even more so, actually. Well, whatever the case may be, you see those pictures of the World Fair with the baby incubators. I'm thinking to myself, why would God put that there? Well, imagine if God was testing you. God's already building you the entire civilization. You don't have to learn, you don't have to build any of it. You don't have to know how to do that. And by giving it to you, that gives you the opportunity to reverse engineer it. That's how everything works in God's world. It's this swap, flip, ricochet, slap. It's this echo. It's this shadow of, it's this dual side of one. It's the dual nature of one, which is actually tri, but anyway. God gives us the entire civilization just built to the nines. Okay, it doesn't matter what year it is, whatever the paperwork says. And so that we can reverse engineer it. And then what does that do? This is how God is liberal and loving. Look at what God gave us with Tartaria. If you do the research, you see these are amazingly beautiful buildings. This is clean energy, free energy. It's all dialed in. It's all working out, but it also helps with your energy. It resonates frequencies. It water healing and just all the best of the best. That's God's love. And he gives it to us. Yeah. And then lets us have our freedom, our liberty. Gives it to us so that we can learn how to do it by reverse engineering it. That's the best way possible because you know that it's already done. You just need to figure out how to take it apart and put it back together again. That's nice of God, isn't it? God didn't, but man's story is that we were left, we woke, we're not, we shouldn't even be here. We're just a fluke. We're a fluke in the evolutionary cycle. Maybe we are alone. We're just an accident. This is just nonsense. God loves us so that we could just reverse engineer it. And what does that also do? It also sees what you're going to do with it. You guys going to unify? Because that system is built already. All you guys got to do is learn how to work together. That's all I got to do. It's already ready already. All of it pretty much works together. You just are going to need some people to, it's not like you need service laborers and servant and slaves. You guys are going to have to work out how to get that done. And I already got the plan for it. But you guys got to work together. And these cities, by the way, all these cities, they were dialed in, but they were connected. They were connected to each other. And I think it even said continents. It's like, what? You mean like bridge or whatever? Well, whatever the case may be. I don't want to go as far as to say continent, but I'm saying, according to the information, these cities were all dialed in worldwide. Like they were around the world. But what did they do? What the record shows is that they started keeping records. Again, like as if they showed up in the middle of it. And that's what told them what they were going to do. They saw the administration. They saw the paperwork that's there. They figured they got to start keeping books. They got to go along with it this way. This is what it is. They showed up to it. Well, so they start keeping records, but they didn't have the ability to say much. And what they started doing was decommissioning these technologies that they didn't know how it worked. Well, I think that doesn't make sense because the only thing they had to do was reverse engineer it. So it's not like reverse engineering it would have been something that embarrassed them. So it turns out, in my opinion, that they chose to exploit us for money, labor, for slave labor at that point. That's when you see labor coming into the records and research and money and banking and insurance, medical. Oh, they also put women in asylums. And then there was those orphan trains. What looks like a hate campaign against women. Something happened. These guys decided they were the ones that were chosen. Now they've got the ownership to these things, and they're going to tell us what to do. And they start implementing these. This is during like the 1850s and beyond that. So they come up with these rules of war. These men, they come up with rules of war. They premeditated 3 world wars, or whatever the rules of war they came up with, and they put women in insane asylums for no reason whatsoever. To do research, which is not research for the bettering of humanity. It's research for the controlling of humanity. And it's also because those women need to know that they'll never be in charge again. Those men hate them. You're not in charge. It's all about fathers and sons. That's right. Well, we'll deny it. So what if you have the babies? We're going to say that we make those babies. And how obnoxious did they get? They threw women in insane asylums. And the women that didn't get married and be cooperative, they took their kids from them. They killed them. They burned them at the stake. They accused them of everything. Their disease, the disease research started with chlamydia, I think. And it seemed like the situation is that a husband needed his wife to give him, pleasure, and she had too many headaches. It seems like the wife was taken to the doctor to figure out what's wrong with her. And the two of them stepped aside, and he goes, you know what I mean? And next thing you know, the doctor's like, I've got a diagnosis of a sexually transmitted disease. They worked in her being able to be punished for not giving him sex. Now she's going to be found with a sexually transmitted disease and accused of sleeping with someone else. And what's the cure for it? They'd give him mercury. That's what killed him. Well, that's how they do things. Reinforcement learning, that kind of smiles to your face, but is absolutely stabbing you in the back. So it's like this, next time he wants to get some pleasure, and she's like, I've got a headache. Oh, really, sweetie? No, let's get you to the doctor right away. And here we are today with hypochondriacs and creepy, dirty doctors. That's what started it. It's continued the whole entire time. They've blamed us for everything. And there's Sophie and the Demerge, then Eve. They told all those stories, by the way. Now, the living logos, the scripture, the living logos. For example, the concordance has a lot of options for those words, and that's how you can find a totally different translation with what information is available. You don't have to get craftier on it. So I believe that that's exactly how it works. Like, they found the information that told them everything they needed to know. All they had to do was study it and decipher it. And that's where the free will comes into play. But which translation are you going to go with? Well, what comes naturally is to go with what your heart feels. Yeah, bing, bing. And that's exactly how I interpret what their heart is. Their heart wants to betroth children at the age of 3. Their heart wants to be able to slaughter you and sprinkle your blood around and burn your flesh and then eat it in front of some altar for some reason, because you believe God wants it, in order for God to talk to you and say whatever you think. I don't know what the fuck you think, but you want to teach your child to do this, and you want to tell everybody else you're going to do it. And obviously that involves the sounds, evil sounds, and the dirty, rotten scoundrel stuff. Your heart smells like shit. Lies and creepy stuff. So I don't know how, but you guys seem to have interpreted the situation as you're the chosen ones, so you guys must be right about God. Well, we'll find out. I think you guys went aggressive. I think that you guys absolutely thought that Satan was the deal, but it's really only God. And it makes exact sense that God would test us this way, because it doesn't make any sense that if man had acquired the intelligence to build those buildings himself and to design the infrastructure, let's just mention that, in and of itself, there's no way that anyone could allow those buildings to be torn down, demolished, covered up, and all this other stuff. No way. There's no way that a person who's an engineer will deface technology like that just out of pure respect. And you guys pretend to have respect, so you guys lose. You guys keep trying to have your cake and eat it too. I mean, come on. Nobody gets to eat their cake. So, but anyway, this is what makes plausible sense. The history we've been told about all of it. How would you know if any of it happened? How would you know? You've got your mom, maybe your grandpa or whatever. There's only a few generations that could be alive at one point. Right. So what would it take for you to redirect society completely, or for this to just be an experiment and we literally, this could be the most recent few hundred years run? How would we wouldn't have any ability to know any otherwise. And the answer, because it's in the records, is not going to fly anymore. It's not going to fly. And I've never been to one of those cities. I've never seen the Library of Congress. I've never seen any one of those buildings. It's so sad too, because like I can't wait to. It's gonna be so great. But they're everywhere. They're in major cities, but I haven't seen one of them. And huge, just wow! I can't wait. It's gonna be great. So, but back to the records. Once I contemplated this recently, this was this last week. It's like, oh yeah, no, that God did that for certain, and it opened up my eyes to see that God does all of this. But of course, God does all this. Of course, God does. It's exactly what makes sense. And it solves all the problems. It solves a lot of problems. For example, it solves all of the, well, it goes hand in hand with my belief that time is going to be renewed 18 years back to 2008, December, right before I give birth. And that's another story for another day. But because the timeline, God can dial the sun back 10 degrees. So God's in charge of the God clock. So of course God can do that. But not only that, God also does the architecture. So God is the architect. And what that tells us is that they know that God exists. There's no way that they don't believe God exists because it was already there already. The problem is that their names were given the title. They were given power. They were given power. That's what the problem is. And they were given power, which caused them to believe that God agreed with them, that God gave them the ability to do whatever they want, that sort of thing. Because they didn't see God. There was no handwritten note. Have fun, guys. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. That wasn't there. They were left to figure out how to figure it out. Okay? And that's what went wrong. They first of all believed that it said they were chosen, right? Oh my gosh, well, look at me. Apparently I'm a homeowner. Apparently I'm in charge. They have power. And then they believed that they were able to do whatever they wanted to do. As if it was some magical happenstance. Luck. It was luck. Not favor by God. It was luck. Okay, well, that's a bad thing to do, but anyhow, here we are. That's exactly what makes sense. That all that stuff was there already. God provided it because God's in charge of the conscious evolution. And when you go there, which man is going, no, it's not possible, it's not possible, because they can't have that. They can't have the truth being way too easy to prove. But let's just go there. Look at the civilization they've been building. They don't have a purpose or a goal. Their rules of war are absolutely absurd. What's their game plan for that? Is their goal that at some point one of them is going to win? I mean, what are they doing it for? Why are they warring with one another? What's their decision in that? They don't identify it. They simply identify all the things that they are supposedly doing it to prevent, which is what tells you what their playbook is. And they've violated all of their rules even. And it's absolute insanity. So what it tells you, first of all, is they don't have any respect for life. They don't have any respect for God. They don't have any respect for creation. They don't have any respect for woman. They don't have any respect for anything other than getting their war fighting done under the guise. But they want to talk us into believing it's perfectly fine because they're trying to breed themselves into our genome. That's why they need the women to be controlled. That's why they need that. That's why their worst nightmare is me. Because there was a woman in charge before. And man hates woman. And I'm also a woman, but I'm a wow man. So what they do, they dialed in the way that they got the stories of Jesus and the bloodline they're trying to eliminate. Money game and behavioral modification and creating a digital twin world. The reality is that they didn't invent anything. Not only that, well, I guarantee you that's what happened. God gave them like analog, automated. And they're like, yeah, we're going to do better maybe. That's what they thought. We're going to come up with electricity. But whatever it is, they dumbed it all down. They turned free energy into coal, soot, death, suffering. They want that. They want suffering. You wouldn't have done that then if you didn't want that then. If that wasn't in your heart, then you would have noticed that you had a civilization already ready to go already. All you needed to do was figure out how to work together. And those baby incubators, in my opinion, are either added to this so that man could try to blame Tartaria for being the people that put babies in incubators, which is obviously not the truth, or that God put that there as a test to see if they use them. You don't need a baby incubator if you've got women around. So whatever the case may be, what they ended up doing was everything wrong, everything wrong, everything wrong. And this is the Vatican, for example. These are guys that are around the world that have weapons and armies. They are. And even though they're stupid, and even though they're arrogant egotists, they're still going gung-ho in their own dumb agenda that doesn't really have any agenda. It's just what? I don't know. I don't know what their agenda is, but I know that it involves not losing power, which means they're desperate because God exists, and they know it because they've been watching it happen to unfold in front of their eyes with me this whole time. They've got me chipped, monitored, surveilled, the whole 9 yards. They know God exists. So now it looks like it's just a matter of semantics. God stepping in and proving that God exists. I mean, God's protecting my life many times. What I mean by stepping in is like the God clock, the shift, the day that it happens, you know? But think about it. Man's acting like he's going to Mars. He got rockets going up and down. This is placating us, guys. We're under a firmament. We don't get to decide what we're doing. God does this whole thing. You need to stop worrying about the whole hit. That's what they did. That's the deception. That's the fuckery of the darkness that's working in their brains. And the harlots of them. Yeah. So we need to open our minds up to this potential, because it not only satisfies the issues of our own understandings, but it sets the stage for what I'm sharing is coming around the corner. And ultimately, it all makes sense, and it's great. It's fucking awesome when you come to see the love that God has for all of us and the enjoyment that God wants us to have, because it's all healing and dialed in. When you know that that's the way that God does it, that God does things analog, not digital. Digital is the mimic, the copy, the shadow of analog. Digital. These guys are all about it, right? Because they got a small dick complex, and they got, so that's why they got to buy a truck. They're that guy. That's them. They're going to do it, even though they must know that the big truck. It's obvious. That's what we think. I don't care if they're going to get it because they need it to make themselves feel better about it. Whatever this movie. So it resolves the problems. What it also does is it helps us go look back at them and go, wait a minute, what? Once you get this is the understanding that has helped me go, like, calibrate the machine, and now there's no static. Now it's a pure signal. Okay, because it helps me it helps remind me of God's power when I look at those buildings and I'm like, oh my God, I'm imagining if I had a bedroom in such a majestical, tall, vaulted ceiling. It's like, were there giants here? Everyone's so skeptical. No, God just made it majestical because of the sound and the echo and the sound and the way that everything. Oh, I love it, I love it, I love it. And just the precision and the intricacy. God, you're beautiful, and it's so precise, and how long it lasts. It's just, God is so super awesome. Man's world has got shit everywhere, and we almost forgot about God. We don't, and it's coming back. So it makes us look back at man when he wants to talk shit, talk his nonsense. This is them. I think I know my science. We think we know our military, our religious. They don't make any sense. They don't talk about anything that matters. Everything that they do is not only bullshit, but it's also a waste of time and energy. And it's also because they got ulterior motives as well. Once you get the glimpse that this is a hate campaign by man against woman because she was in charge before, and that's just him being butthurt. Him being butthurt. Because if she was in charge, that must mean that she has something to do with building all this, or favor from God. You'll see all the angel statues, they have their heads cut off. Well, in Revelations it says Those will be brought back to life that were beheaded for the testimony of Jesus. And it's those angel statues whose heads are cut off. It's indicating that Christ is the female. And that's the truth. The Christ is the vessel carrier of the Holy Spirit, the monogene of God, the divine. The access to the divine is through the womb. The womb is an aperture. So you can look at the divine as the other side of space, where the light comes from. The aperture, the camera obscura, the pixel that's open in the window, that's a sun. It's actually just an aperture, a hole, a pixel. And the light from the other side, permalight, like outside, is coming through. So what a Christ is a womb. And we have it. You don't. Period. You can bitch and moan all day long. You can wear dresses and high heels, doesn't matter. It's us that has a womb. You better believe that's that transgender thing. They wanted to get those kids' wombs so they could do more research. They're torturers and they're evil, mad scientists, and they're going to be gone soon. Yay! Final answer. I'm happy to see you guys go. And I love it because God has a sense of humor. Oh, trust me, don't be so upset about it. You failed the test. God does things tried and true. So I'm just saying this. Who am I to say anything? But if you end up getting eliminated, that's because it needed to happen. God does things tried and true. But you're not going away. You're just having to start all over at the beginning again. What's wrong with that? That's what you deserve with your bad attitude. Your attitude, once your attitude changes from learning more, then you'll be able to graduate. That's how it works, kiddo. And it's all the perspective of God giving it all to us, right? You almost have empathy for man and his struggles when you look at it like he just started out, he had to learn how to use fire. He had to make a wheel. He had to carry around a club and to get that woman in the... They had to hunt, spear big animals. Blood, they love their blood. These boys don't want to... They think they're intelligent, but they can't let go of being an animal. You're going to have to come to terms with it. But that's my point. Once I realized that, no, there's no suffering of man. There is no left behind. God gave it to us at the top of the line. And you guys destroyed it. Turned it into this bullshit commercial system. Slave. They stopped the water systems and used those tunnels for trafficking. They tore down the train system that was running on water, and then made it run on coal, which created a coal industry, which created coal workers and death. And then we needed to make oil. Remember, that was an oil industry. But it's all for money. Well, no, it's really not about the money. They already had it. It's about control. And it's about allowing you to kill yourself because you didn't measure up. It's about suffering people to death because they feed off of it. That's what. They feed off of it. They're a parasite that happened into a human body and is driving the mental show. And that's who's in charge right now. They're all infested with that disease. And they're not going to wake up tomorrow morning and not have that disease on their own cognition. It's not, if that was to happen, that would be the same morning that we all woke up and everything else got better. So they're not going to snap out of it on their own. Way to go. Their armies and everybody listens to them, though. Yeah, well, that's true. Well, I found it in the scripture where it says, basically, there's not going to be many men in the next stage, just like it used to be. God makes a vessel. I have a Y chromosome. From time to time, a woman births twins, male and female. Not often. It's like Zeus and the goddesses, which is why man is far and few between, but he's the son of God. When we are doing things the way God built it, we don't have sons of man. Which is why it's going to be only the divine masculine that makes it in the gate. But we're getting 18 years do-over before you have to have the final answer. We're going to get an 18-year do-over with proper leadership. So you can change your tune is the good news, ding-dongs. The good news. You can stop acting like a weirdo. But now you get to have that information, and now you get to behave. So you didn't do it the right way before. You were self-righteous jerks. Okay. All right. Well, you certainly proved that you don't have the right ideas. or the right intention. And honestly, we're quite scared of what you've been willing and capable of doing. But we're smarter than that. We don't get scared. But we're gonna get an 18-year do-over to undo the most of your fuckery and see how you behave. You still have to behave. And if you don't, you'll get taken out along the way. And you won't make it in the gates. Okay? And that's what you need to know. Now, it's not about any of the things that they're doing. Any of the things that any of them are talking about or doing. You got your Vatican trying to issue stuff. You guys are still taking it oh so seriously. You really do. But it's all bullshit. So why don't you guys start now with your behaving properly and start with accepting the reality at hand. That's the first step in the right direction. That's what I wanted to present. So if you have any questions, comments, love me or hate me, leave me a comment. Communicate with me. You can send me an email at lightheartedtruthcovenant@gmail.com. I'm Allison. Until next time.